Hey everyone, how you doing? All right, I figured I would go through this story. Apparently, it's a guy who resigned from the U.S. State Department over the Israel-Hamas war. So let's take a look at it. Let's see.
The war between Israel and Hamas has.
First off, sorry. Before we get into it, so it says there's like a war in the Holy Land, and I was watching a video earlier about the Crusades, and it was talking about holy wars. There's no such thing as a holy war, so I figured I would just touch on that real quickly. Because you're not supposed to murder people, right? That's one of the commandments we get from God, is that you can't murder people. There are situations, emergency, immediate self-defense, things like that. But you can't murder people, especially innocent people. So you can't have, there's no way to have a holy war. To have a holy war, you would have to agree to murder. There's no way around it. It's a holy war, so you're going to have to kill people. So, thou shalt not murder, you're going to violate that, amongst many others, but you're going to kill God's creations, right? God created everything, all of it. So, and that's by God's design, when we perish, things like that. So, there's no way to have a holy war. You can't, I'm not going to pick on the Muslims here, but, Muslims, you'd be an apostate and they would have to kill you. If you tried to leave the religion, they would have to kill you. Some of them believe that. That's ridiculous. And that's how you know you have a false religion. If your religion ever calls for you to murder someone, it's a fake religion. Because God is a God of peace, cooperation, nonviolence, benevolent, things like that. It's not a God of war. Doesn't want to sit around up there and just watch us kill each other, which is something we've been doing for thousands upon thousands of years. It's what we're really good at because we don't listen to God's commandments. We don't follow directions. We live in rebellion, and that's how we created this place. And that's why it looks the way it does, because we live in rebellion. We have directions from God. We just choose not to follow them. We don't listen. We like to go our own way. We like to do our own thing. We're very independent, very prideful, very arrogant, very boastful. That's how humans operate. Not all, but a lot. Enough. Very, very few people here adhere to God's commandments, especially considering the new ones, right? The new covenant. Veganism, you can't murder. You can't murder animals. You can't murder people. Right? It's benevolence. You have to be nonviolent. You can't go to war. You can't kill things. Everything has value. Very small instances of emergency self-defense are allowed because people don't listen to God's commandments and they run around trying to kill people. So as it stands today, you need that option for defense. Not offense, defense. And defense in a way that's not going to hurt innocent people. Someone shooting at you directly, that's a threat. Someone running at you with a knife, things like that. I'm not going to go through all the examples, but you understand it's emergency self-defense. Just like if you had a concealed weapons permit. Why do people have weapons here, at least in the U.S., a lot of them? Because a lot of the people here are sinful and they live in rebellion against God's commandments. So they run around like looting pirates. Running around, taking things that don't belong to them, stealing. They're violent. They like to hurt people. They live in rebellion. And that's why people here, it's something in the culture, they choose to own guns. I own guns. I own quite a few. Don't carry them anymore. I don't use them. I used to go target shooting, but I don't anymore. But as long as people live in rebellion against God's commandments and they don't value your life at all, and they would punch you, hit you, drown you, hang you, disembowel you, set you on fire, things that humans do, as long as that's still going on, people will feel the need to defend themselves. Those options are just for emergency self-defense, which will tie into this because they're going to be talking about armaments and selling to other countries. But I just wanted to touch on that one thing. So if anyone ever talks about a holy war, it's not holy. It's unholy because you're going to have to kill people to accomplish your holy war. And if your religion is correct and it's God's religion, spoken from God's mouth, then it's a correct religion. That's the only religion that is correct. And that religion will never ask you to go kill someone. It will never say, well, these Muslims or these Sikhs or Zoroastrians or Hindus or whatever, they don't believe in the correct religion. And that would be a true statement. But it doesn't mean that you go over and you start some crusade and you start murdering people. You're going to murder your way into God's goodwill. It will never happen. So even though people follow false religions, and a lot of them do, especially today, because we weren't given every single commandment that we were supposed to follow. It's more of a new ad. But, we just got those. So a lot of the people aren't following them. But it doesn't mean you get to go kill them and wipe them out. Because there's nothing holy about a holy war. You're going to have to murder to get that done. And that will never be acceptable in God's eyes. And you're going to take that sin upon yourself, and it's going to be placed on your soul. And the only, safety you have at that point is to repent. To tell God that you are very, very sorry about what you've done. And the most important part of repentance is that you never do it again. Saying you're sorry is nice, but it only is valid if you stop the activity. You can't keep murdering people and then saying you're sorry and then continue to murder people. Or any other commandments that you don't follow. You can't keep saying you're sorry about lying and continuing to lie. You can't murder people and then say you're sorry and continue to murder. You just can't do it. The whole part of repentance is that you're telling God, I'm sorry, I screwed up, and I will never do it again. So, we'll get into this video. I got to leave here shortly, so we'll try to get through this one. It's a pretty quick one, so it should be easy. But no holy wars. Even though people don't agree with you religiously, you don't get to kill them. You don't get to hurt them and take their stuff. You don't get to get war spoils. That's never going to be approved by God. There is no such thing as a holy war. They are all unholy because of what happens in war, which is disgusting. And then God has to sit up there and watch you all sit around and kill each other, thinking that you're holy, while at the same time you're committing grievous sins upon God's creations. So let's take a look at this.
An eruption of anger and grief in many corners of the world. It has also launched governments into action, and first among them, the U.S. and the Biden White House. But even inside government, there is some disagreement about the approach. Here's Nick Schifrin.
The State Department's Bureau of Political Military Affairs is responsible for most arms transfers to American allies and partners. And for more than 11 years, Josh Paul ran its Congressional and Public Affairs Office. He wrote in his public resignation letter this week, he knew his job was not, quote, without moral compromise, but calls the transfer of weapons to Israel, quote, short-sighted, destructive.
I want to, I'm not going to get into this person too much directly, but what was the term that he used? Let me make sure I got that right.
Real quote, short-sighted, destructive, and unjust. And Josh Paul joins me now. He wrote in his public resignation letter this week, he knew his job was not, quote, without moral compromise.
Well, that's your problem right there. I'm glad that he quit his job, and I'm glad that he did this video so I can talk over it. But that's the whole problem right there, is that people do moral compromises all the time. We know we're not supposed to lie and kill people and lust and envy and all these things back there. But you do moral compromises, especially for work, especially when it comes to money. When it comes to your job, I'm sure this job you had was a decent job, probably made good money, good benefits package. People compromise morally all the time, and it's almost always for money. Money or power or fame, things like that. Those are things people will sell out for. They'll sell out. They'll sell their soul out for money and fame and power, All the things that are very sought after in society. Those are things that we humans love. We love money, power, and fame. Everyone wants to be famous. Everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants to be popular. That's pride. But people sell out for money because of all those nice things you can buy with money, all those luxury items you don't need. It's fine to have some things, but people, they just chase it their whole lives. They chase luxury items. They're never happy with what they have. They always want more. More, more, more. Bigger house, nicer car, more Sea-Doos, more motorcycles, more e-scooters, more guns to go hunting down and murdering animals, whatever their hobby is. They always want more. They're never satisfied. But a lot of that's because of moral compromise, and it has to do with money. You can get people to do some nasty things that they would never agree to morally or ethically. They would never agree to it. But when you dangle money in front of their face, you can get them to do it. You have girls and guys who will get on camera and have sex and do all types of debaucherous things that are on video. They make videos and they put them out online, right? Pornography. One of the scourges on society. Pornography. It's everywhere. Infects everyone's minds. Lust. Which leads to adultery. But why do they do it? They do it for money. You're defiling your body in front of the entire world, doing debaucherous, disgusting sexual acts for money. Just like a stripper, right? You're debasing yourself, you're defiling yourself in front of the entire world for some cash, so they can throw cash at you. Tuck it in, however they want to do it. But basically, you get debased and defiled for cash. The same thing with hookers and prostitutes, male and female. It's the same thing. And it's moral compromise. When you start to compromise your morals, which should come from God, since God built the place, you're going down a slippery slope. And that's called sin, backsliding, whatever term you'd like to use. But that sin will always hurt you. It will hurt your body physically, and it will absolutely attach to your soul, which is going to make for an unpleasant experience. Since we're in an experience that never ends, you're always going to be experiencing something. So the key is that you want to make sure that your experience is a good one. Since it's an eternal journey, we should probably listen to God and follow God's directions. Because this place is full of people who compromise morally, which is why it looks the way it does. Everyone in this place compromises morally. It's a place full of sin, absolutely full. And because of that, it's not a nice place. It's a place full of war and famine and violence and racism and sexism and all the other isms and slaughtering of animals. Probably billions a day. They get slaughtered. Because people don't value life here. Not in this place. In this place, it's all about you. You want to get a nice car, a nice house, nice husband, nice wife. It's all about you. At most, you might care about a few people around you. And then you go out, they take the circle out a bit further, right? Maybe your neighborhood, maybe your city, state, your nation. But that's about it. In here, we don't care about everyone. We don't see everyone as a child of God, which would make all of us one nation. All of us. Everyone in the globe. All of us. One nation under God. So not this little section. All of it. Everything. So not this little chunk over here where I live, where I happen to live, not the entire United States, not the Americas, not any individual continent. All of it. Every bit of it. We're all one nation. All of this, under God. That's how we should be thinking, but we don't. Because we're selfish. And that's, and selfish is something that we've always been good at here. Always. Always been selfish. Which leads to a lot of moral compromise, which hurts people. Because this gentleman here, he morally compromised working in this department, which I'll let him get to here in a second, where he was selling arms. He was selling weapons to countries where for a fact those bombs are not just going to be dropped and kill the bad guys that are actively attacking some settlement, going in there to rape and murder and pillage and cut heads off, whatever they're going to do. It might be used for some of that. But when you sell those weapons, they will absolutely kill civilians. There's no way around it. Especially when you're looking at a drone program. I mean, the technology is nice, but you're also, who knows, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 feet in the sky, making decisions where you're going to have an acceptable level of collateral damage. So you're saying to God, I know you told me I can't murder people, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sell these weapons. Not only sell them, I'm going to drop these weapons. We'll just take the U.S. as an example since I live here. So we're going to drop these weapons over in the Middle East, wherever we happen to be operating. Over here in this area, probably all over, but we're going to go drop these weapons because there are some bad guys. I don't know, they got them color-coded here. We'll just pick one. Iraq, I know that was popular recently. So let's just say there's some bad guys over there in Iraq. That's what the people in the U.S. think. So they don't see the Iraqis as part of the same family. They've committed some heinous acts. I'm sure they have. So they go over there and they drop them. But to do that, they know there's a chance that they're going to kill innocent civilians. And they still do it. They still drop the bombs. So they're telling God, I know I'm not supposed to murder, but I don't care. Because I'm mad at these people. They just attacked this base. Whatever it is they did. They did something. They've upset us. We consider them a threat. So we're going to drop these bombs, even though we know we're going to kill innocent civilians. That's moral compromise. So now you're killing God's creations. You're not listening to God's commandments. And you're doing it because it's your job. You're getting paid to do it. You're in the military. If you don't do it, you're going to lose your job, lose your rank, lose your pension. You may even get thrown into prison. But, you signed up as a soldier to go to war, to protect your country. And at the same time, you're going to have to make moral compromises. And you're going to have to either drop those bombs yourself and kill innocent civilians, or like this gentleman here, I guess he was somehow involved in selling the arms to other countries. So there's moral compromises. You might think they're valid. They're not. That moral compromise, you're still going to be held to the same standards, to godly standards. So be very careful if you take a job or a position, whatever it is, where you're going to have to compromise. Because God has been very clear on murder and other commandments that are black and white issues. There's no gray. If you can't do it without killing civilians, don't do it. Very small instances of emergency self-defense. And that is for you, like the United States. I'll just pick on them. That's the U.S. actively doing it, or selling to another country that you know will do it, or especially selling to a country you know doesn't care about human rights, doesn't care about rights at all. You could sell it to another country that treats people like we treat animals. Imagine how horrific that would be. So let's get back to the video here. So I'm going to leave here shortly.
But calls the transfer of weapons to Israel, quote, short-sighted, destructive, and unjust. And Josh Paul joins me now. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
To the NewsHour. So why are weapons transfers to Israel in this moment unjust?
Maybe because we watch the news and we've watched them destroy Gaza. We've seen probably up to 1,000 kids get killed. The numbers keep going up each day. It's impossible to keep a hold of, but at least 1,000 people so far, probably more, 1,500 or 3,000. I've seen 3,000 too, They're just killing people. So why would you not want to sell it to them? Because they're murdering people, that's why. If I have a neighbor down the street that I know is crazy, he's evil, he's murderous, I know this guy, it's a different example. So let's say I know this guy is an arsonist and he loves to burn things down. But he's my neighbor. He's in the neighborhood or even a few neighborhoods away. But I know he's an arsonist and I've got gasoline and he's angry. And I see him out one day. He's angry. He's out of gas or he's about to be out of gas. He's like, James, I need some gasoline. He's upset. He's pacing around. He's cursing. You could tell this guy's got like revenge in his eyes. He wants to do something bad. You know it. He's got wrath in his heart. He's like, oh, I need some gasoline. He's just angry. He's storming around. And I've got gas. And I could sell it to him and I could make money. But do you think he's going to do anything nice with that gasoline? No. No, he's going to take it out there and he's going to go burn someone's place down. Because he's an arsonist. Because he has a history of arson. I've seen him burn things down. I've heard about him burning things down. The guy is an arsonist. He sets things on fire with anger in his heart. I'm not talking about a controlled burn, a brush burn, so that you don't have a forest fire later. No, this guy, he just burns people's places down because he gets angry and his heart's full of wrath. So I could do a moral compromise and say, well, I need money. I like money. And I'm willing to sell this arsonist gasoline so that he can go burn someone's house down because, hey, I didn't do it. All I did was sell him gasoline. It's legal. It's legal to sell him gasoline. I'm not the one burning it down. He is. Now, I could morally compromise, but at that point, I know exactly what he's going to do with that gasoline. I know it. And it's going to be a violation against God. He's going to end up killing someone. He's going to go burn someone's house down because he's upset. So if I sell him that gasoline, is it legal? Sure. It's legal to sell someone gasoline, I guess. I mean, if you know they're going to kill someone, I hope that's illegal, but that's essentially what they're doing here. So I wouldn't sell him gasoline even though I could make money on it, even if there was great profit. Even if I could sell that gasoline for like 3 times what I paid for it. I could sell it for $20 a gallon because for whatever reason, this guy can't get gas from anybody else. I wouldn't do it because I know what he's going to do with that gasoline. He's going to go burn something down, burn someone's house down, kill someone. So I'm not going to take that moral compromise because I know that God knows everything. Absolutely everything. Every thought that I have, every action, everything I did, everything I wanted to do but didn't, things like that. That God knows. And it's all going in your log file, my log file, your log file. And when you die and your soul comes out of your body, that's where that's going to come into play. It comes into play during our life too, but there's no way to avoid it. It doesn't matter if God decides to act on that transgression now or in a little while or way down the road or after you're out of your body. It doesn't matter. So I wouldn't do that transgression. I would not morally compromise because I know without a fact it's going to come back on me. It's going to come back to haunt me in one way or another. So let's get through this one in a few minutes here.
Let's back up and recognize what we're talking about. We're talking about the transfer of arms that can last for decades, whose purpose is to kill. That's an obvious point, but it underlines the
It's another good point, though. These weapons, they're designed to last a long time. Who knows what they're going to be used for? In my example, right, the gasoline's only good for so long. These weapons, they're probably good for 20, 30 years, 50 years, who knows? Long time.
The decisions that we make every single day in the US government and the State Department. Recognizing that, the Biden administration earlier this year issued a conventional arms transfer policy which raised the standard for the transfer of weapons to what they call a more likely than not. If it is more likely than not that weapons the US provides to another country will be used for violations of human rights, they will not be transferred.
What were the standards before? They just now got that updated? And it's not even saying if they know it all, they're going to absolutely, they'll definitely have collateral damage, something like that. They won't sell it.
More likely than not, the weapons the US provides to
More
another
likely
country
than not.
will be
Wow.
used for violations of human
It's a
rights.
low bar.
They will not be transferred. What we've seen with Israel repeatedly in operations in Gaza in 2009, in 2014, 2021, is massive civilian casualties, thousands of Palestinians killed through a relatively indiscriminate use of bombs to...
So basically exactly what we're seeing on television today and computer screens. So in my analogy, the US is the one selling gasoline to the entity that's very, very upset and is going to go do damage with that gasoline. So the United States is selling all these munitions that'll be over there blowing up Palestinians or Jordanians or Egyptians, whoever they end up using these weapons against in the next 20, 30, 40 years, however long those weapons are good for, you don't even know. All the United States is doing, like that Merchant of Death, you ever seen that movie? I think with Nicolas Cage. The guy's just selling weapons to everyone, to these war-torn countries, just to get rich. He's selling all these weapons. Doesn't care where they'll be used. That's more of an extreme example, but doesn't care. He's just there to make money. It's a business. It's about the money. So as long as they can sell those munitions and systems, they don't care. They just want to make money. So those bombs that they're selling, those are going to be blowing up Palestinian kids, women, children, pregnant people, disabled people, just normal people, regular people. They're going to be blowing up people, murdering people. And the United States is selling those arms to Israel, knowing that they're going to use them to kill people. And they're doing it to make money. They're not doing it at cost. They're doing it to make money. And they'll probably say, oh, we have these military agreements. I don't care what agreements you have. You have a covenant with God that says that you cannot murder people. But for financial gain and political arrangements, you're selling weapons that are absolutely 100% going to murder people. That's the moral compromise that the United States makes every single day. And I think they're trying to get $100 billion or something like that in more aid. Now, a lot of that's going to the Ukraine, where that situation is different. Is there collateral damage? I guess. But it's a totally different situation because you have Russia invading the Ukraine, bringing their armed forces down to murder them. And they're unfortunately having to defend themselves because you have an invading force coming in with armaments trying to kill you. So they're coming in, you're at home, they're coming in. This is a different situation because you have Israel that came back into that region and started to take over. They started to migrate there a lot, and then they had agreements with the British government. They eventually got their state created, but they went in there in the early 1900s and started settling there. So they came in. So as far as the Palestinians are concerned, they're an occupying force there because they weren't there before. They hadn't been there for a very long time, and they started to migrate there. And then they got, buddy with the British, and they passed some rules and eventually got their state. And then there was the Nakba, whole big history there. But it's a different situation. It's not a terrorist nation coming in to destroy you. This is a group coming into your country and taking your country over. So this is, as far as the Palestinians are concerned, they were sitting there early 1900s, and all of a sudden, all these Jewish folks started coming back home, and then they wanted to create a state of Israel. So over time, they're displacing all the Palestinians. So you can see why the Palestinians might be upset. The same way the United States, if all of a sudden Russians started showing up over in the United States, just started showing up and taking over and pushing us out, and over 50 years they got half of the United States, I'm pretty sure the United States would have an issue with that, if I had to guess. So it's a different situation over there, but the Palestinians feel that their land was invaded and taken over and they're getting squeezed out, which is how it looks if you look at a map over time. But the United States is selling weapons to Israel they're 100% going to kill civilians. 100%. All you have to do is turn on the news and watch, and you'll see it. So they're complicit in the attack on the Palestinians. They've made moral compromises for money and political arrangements and military agreements. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you've made moral compromises that are going to affect you, that are affecting you, but they will also affect you down the road. God's commandments are the only ones. They supersede everything. All the little rules and regulations that we make up as human beings, those really aren't that relevant. Because everything, God's commandments come over your, national, federal, state, what civil, what local, doesn't matter. They're God's commandments. All your commandments should be based on God's commandments. That way you know you're in alignment with the one person who controls your eternity. That's the one party you have to keep happy, is the one that has control over your eternal future. Not your little 80 years that we have in these bodies.
Destroy buildings. And yet, in this context of this conflict today, where we've already seen, again, thousands of Palestinian casualties, there has been no policy debate. Indeed, there's been a rush to provide arms where normally there is discussion, consideration, and thought.
So the Israeli Defense Forces, I should say that they only target Hamas officials, Hamas weapons, and
Unless they happen to be in a civilian area, which in a tight place like Gaza is pretty much everywhere. And Israel will claim, right, from their intelligence that Hamas operates from within civilian areas, buildings, things like that. If that's the case, then you can't use bombs. Because there's no way to attack them without killing innocent people, without murdering. Those 10 Commandments that I think Jewish people should be pretty familiar with, there's one in there against murder. So if you have to blow up civilians to get to a quote-unquote bad guy, you can't do it. You have to go in, get your boots on the ground. You're full of anger and rage and wrath, right? Okay, get your boots on the ground and go in there and try to get your civilians. But you can't use exploding munitions if you know you're going to kill innocent people. Negotiate. Try to get them back. If that doesn't work and they're acting like, heinous terrorists, you're going to have to go in with boots on the ground. But you can't go in there and blow the place up. You'll just be walking through rubble at this point from the way it looks.
rocket launch sites. It sounds like what you said at the end there is one of your key criticisms. Did you raise your concerns within state, and what was the response?
I raised them, in fact, as soon as 2 days after the Hamas atrocity. And let me just be clear, that was an atrocity and an outrage.
100%.
Period. No further caveats.
100%. The people that committed acts like that, they're acting in absolute rebellion. They don't care about God. You can't when you treat people like that. They were acting like absolute savages, barbarians, whatever terms you want to use. They were acting like human beings. They were treating those people like humans treat animals.
Shortly after that, I raised concerns that, look, we've seen that for 20 years, the provision of security assistance to Israel, and for longer than that, has not led to peace. And instead, it has used the way it has employed that security is actually led us further from peace. And so I wrote to a number of leaders within the department 2 days after Hamas's attack and said, I recognize that there's going to be a demand signal for arms to Israel. Can't we for once stop and think about if this is actually getting us to where we need to be before?
You're selling weapons to a country that's indiscriminately bombing a very tight civilian area. They do it every day. You've heard their press releases. They don't care. They're going to treat them like barbarians. The way they're acting, the way they're attacking Gaza, it's as if they think there are 2.3 million terrorists living there, not 2.3 million Palestinians with a certain portion that are part of Hamas, the radical wing. I don't know if that number is 15, 30,000. I don't know how many Hamas terrorists are in there, people living in rebellion. I don't know. But it's not 2.3 million terrorists. The way Israel is acting, it seems as if they think that, or they just don't care. They think that Hamas is in there, and they're going to treat everybody else, all the other Palestinians, like cattle. And they're just going to sacrifice them for the cause of getting to Hamas. They're treating Palestinians like people treat animals, like they have no value, like they have no souls. That's how they're treating them.
Forward. And what was the response?
No response.
And how unusual is that?
It's extremely unusual. If you think about other countries in the region, I won't name names, but there are obviously a number where there are troubling human rights records. And the debate over arms sales requests that come from those countries can last within the administration itself for months, sometimes even years.
If there are countries that hold on.
Countries can last within the administration itself for months, sometimes even a number where there are troubling human rights records.
Okay, they have troubling human rights records, which means they probably act like savages, sin-filled savages. So,
and the debate over arms sales request.
So what's the debate? They act like savages. What are you debating about? Debating about, do you want the money? Or what those weapons will be used against? Will they be used against a partner? You shouldn't even be considering that. If they have troubling human rights records, it's an absolute no when it comes to arms sales. Should you arm them? No. Because if they have troubling human rights records, it means they live outside of God's direction. They live in rebellion. They don't care. They do whatever they want. So the answer is just no. It shouldn't take months or years or days. It should just be a flat no. No, we're not selling weapons to you. Sorry. Go find someone else to get weapons to go murder people with.
Come from those countries can last within the administration itself for months, sometimes even years.
During your time, though, the United States, for example, I will name names, provided arms to Egypt, widely criticized for its human rights abuses, and to the Saudi coalition that have killed many, many civilians in Yemen and accused of violating the laws of war by Human Rights Watch. Why do you not resign after the...
And I think they also cut up a reporter not too long ago. So human rights violations, absolutely. That's a lot of countries now. It's a lot of countries, a lot of leaders. Their pride gets to them. They live as if there's no God. They live as if there are no commandments that are handed down. They live in rebellion. They do whatever they want.
Because those were cases where I could make a difference and manage through my work and the work of many others in the department to add some elements to it. So, for example, there is a training program that has been going on now with Saudi pilots to improve their targeting. And in the case of Egypt, of course.
Even if you improve targeting, if you're selling to a country that's willing to shoot into a civilian complex and they're okay with collateral damage, you don't sell to them. There's no acceptable limit to collateral damage. Absolutely zero. 0.00. No collateral damage. So you can't sell to people who have a collateral damage limit that they're okay with. If they're okay with a little bit of murder, maybe a little bit more, the answer is no. We don't sell to murderers. That should be your answer. What's your acceptable limit on collateral damage? 15%. Absolutely not. Don't ever contact me again.
Leahy vetting, where units that are identified to be involved in gross violation of human rights are not eligible to receive U.S. weapons. There is a Leahy vetting process for Israel. It has never found an Israeli unit to be guilty of a gross violation of human rights.
Why don't you turn on the news? Go to your favorite one, Fox News or whichever one you want to watch. Go look at the news. Gross violation of human rights? Look at the kill count for Israel at this point. Stack it up to thousands of people killed. Those aren't thousands of terrorists. So, and the children, I don't think they were a threat. So, gross violations of human rights. You blew up a child. You put third-degree burns all over a child, disabled person, pregnant person, whatever category you want to use. People, humans. You are blowing up human beings and killing them and maiming them. That's not a gross violation of human rights. It's a violation of God's rights for us. It's a violation of God's commandments. So I'd say it's a gross violation.
system.
Okay, well, you could argue that isn't that proof that the vetting that State Department does do, you say, of the Israel's defense forces have not found a violation of Leahy? Does that mean that they don't violate
Well,
Leahy?
they've identified many, but they have not been able to come to a conclusion which requires senior level sign-off within the department.
Just to be clear, are you saying that there have been units inside Israel's defense force that the State Department has been concerned about?
Yes.
Their violations or their actions. You've brought that to senior officials, and over the years, consistently, they have not acted on
That is correct.
You don't need an investigation. Turn the news on. Look at what they're doing. They're blowing up people. They're murdering people every single day on television, and they haven't even gone in yet. They haven't even rolled the tanks in there yet. Imagine what that kill count's going to look like 6 months from now, if they go through with it. And who knows if they'll even get that done in 6 months. I heard someone say they could be in there for years. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But look at what they've already done. You don't need an investigation. Anybody with access to the news can see what they're doing. So the answer is no, you can't have any weapons. And chances are, if you can't sell to Israel, you can't sell to anyone else either. How many of the people you're selling these guns to, these munitions, bombs, things like that, how many of those people can say they have a 0.00% collateral damage rate on their weapon deployments? Because that is what's required. If you have an invading force, you got some crazies in a tank and they're running at you and they're shooting, they're coming into your town, they're going to blow you up. If you need to disable that tank and whatever you need to do to defend yourselves, that's one situation. Blowing up civilians, when you know your collateral damage rate will be over 0.00, is not acceptable. That is murder. You need to find another way to do it. Ideally, once everyone starts to listen to God's directions, you won't even need these weapons because people will learn to live together in a nonviolent, peaceful, cooperative manner. That's how we're supposed to live. But we live in rebellion, and we've turned this place into exactly what it is, where you have to sell these munitions so you can sit around and blow people up. And people are selfish and they don't care about people. They don't have any values. Your values should come from God. That's where you should get your values from. That's what you should base your laws on. It's one nation, all of us, under God. That's it. Common set of rules. And then we can all get along. But unfortunately, we're human beings. We're filled with sin, and this world looks like it.
These questions, of course, were put to Matt Miller, the State Department spokesman, earlier today. Let's take a listen to what he said.
We comply with all applicable statutory requirements and regulatory requirements in our
You don't comply with God's requirements. Of that much, I'm sure.
vision of military assistance to Israel as we do to every other country in the world.
Isn't that what the U.S. pushes, and isn't that the policy?
I think that is right. We have complied with the laws. The problem is that the laws are intentionally vague in some cases.
Exactly.
So, for example, they require a determination that something has happened in terms of gross violation of human rights before sanctions, as they were, could be applied. So, yes, absolutely, we are acting within the law.
Not God's law. You're acting within laws that you made up. You're not acting within God's laws. Of that much, I'm sure.
Is that good enough? And we are certainly not acting
No, it's not.
within the conventional arms transfer policy.
Finally, you have deep experience in the region.
You're following laws created by a species loaded up to the brim of their hat in sin. This place is rife with sin, and you're following laws created by sinful people. Sinful politicians that are worried about themselves and their close little inner circle. They're worried about money, fame, and power. You have sinful people creating laws that other sinful people should live under. Does that make any sense to you? You should use God's laws that would fix this place. But unfortunately, we live in a place full of sin, where pretty much everyone lives in rebellion. They sit around and murder each other and murder the animals. We have no idea how to live here. We haven't for a very long time. God's laws are the ones that matter, that will fix this place, that will give you a slice of heaven while you're here. But unfortunately, we have laws created by sinful, greedy people who are selfish. Those laws will never work. God's laws are the only ones that will fix this place. And it might take you a while to figure that out, but eventually, maybe not this generation, maybe the next generation, the one that'll listen, maybe that generation will get it done. It might be too early. You'll get all the information now, but you may not be smart enough to act on it. So it might take a generation for this to come around, but at least these videos will still be around. So it'll work eventually. The only question is how long it's going to take us to change, which I don't know. That's based on people. And people don't act rationally, especially when it comes to God.
Have connections throughout the region. Do those connections drive your opinion on this?
They certainly drive a lot of my passion, but I think at the end of the day, what has driven me throughout my service in the Political Military Affairs Bureau is a passion for human rights, something that has compelled me always to look at those issues and to carry them forward as something that we need to do better on and can do better on.
Yes.
Josh Paul, thank you very much.
So I'm glad he did what he did. It's the right thing to do. Probably gave up benefits of staying within the State Department. What it all boils down to is that this place is filled with people who live in rebellion. It's not an accident that we're here. This is a place that we created. It's filled with selfish sin and disregard for human and animal life and our environment. We've managed to treat each other like garbage, fill the planet with garbage, and murder animals and eat them every single day. This place is in rough shape. It's not nice. And you can't see it, just like I couldn't see it until recently. But now I can. So this place, you might think it's nice. It's not nice. It's loaded to the gills with sin. Loaded to the top with sin. And people don't even see it because they grew up in this swamp. This swamp of sin, we grew up in it. I didn't see it before. You probably don't see it. Maybe you're starting to see it. It's in bad shape. And it's because we follow laws created by people who are living lives of sin, and they live in rebellion. And we have those politicians making our laws instead of following God's laws, which supersede anything. God's laws are on top of all the little silly laws that we make as human beings. Those laws don't matter. And those laws are only applicable while you're in your body. God's laws will control your experience now and into the eternal future. So if we want to change this place, we need to start listening. But that's it. I got to get out the door. So it's been nice. Just remember, God loves us, wants to provide guidance so that we can save ourselves. We're going to be given all the answers, all the ones that we need. And all you have to do is listen. So maybe it won't be this generation, but eventually this information will change the world, and it will change your eternity. How long it takes us to actually listen and get it done, I don't know. Look how long it took for Jesus. So maybe these messages aren't for this generation. Maybe they're for the next generation. That's possible. We'll see. That's it. Have a great weekend.